I read that you went to Berkeley to study music, but I was curious when the love for film came. Was it later, or did it kind of grow from your childhood as well?
Oh, it definitely came from my childhood. Yeah, I've always loved movies. I didn't realize that the two could go together for a very long time. But yeah, I was, I used to act in plays in middle school and stuff, and I loved just that. I loved movies. I loved acting. I was never very good at it. Um, but yeah, so I've always loved it. I've always loved sci-fi movies. And Back to the Future was a favorite. I think a big spark for me was That Thing You Do, because
Hmm.
it was, I mean, that was the dream, right? You see these guys who are playing. I was in a band at the time or shortly after, and you see these guys who are playing music in their garage, and then you follow their rise to stardom and their downfall. But that part I didn't care about when I was a kid. And so that was like a formative moment for me to be like, oh, music can be a job and it can be something that people really do as a career.
Do you remember what it was when you realized that like a career in film and score composing was possible? Was there a soundtrack that made that realization for you?
I was always like generally aware of John Williams because growing up in Rhode Island, we were close to Boston, and every year he would do concerts with the Boston Pops playing all of his music. So we went there and for high school field trips to go see him. And so I had this like awareness of that. It didn't seem like something attainable. It seemed like, what am I going to be, the next Beethoven? Like that's not a real job. But then when I went to Berkeley, I knew I was interested in that type of music. I didn't think it was something that I could really do, but I took the film scoring 101 class and I just really connected with it because being in bands for so long, you try to get everybody together to play and somebody's busy and somebody doesn't care and somebody's not practicing. And this you can kind of do by yourself. Yeah, that was my moment, I think.
Yeah. And you're still in a band now, right? Moonrock?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's loosely called a band, but yeah, it's my best friend Scott and I making electronic classical hybrid music. We don't know how to perform it without getting a band of like 40 people. So it's just we just release the music now. We're treating it as our like Sergeant Pepper era without having gone through the beginning of the Beatles career. But yeah, so we still make music. It's slow but sure, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you find that like it's when you're scoring for a film or writing for the band, it like works a different part of your brain that like if you hit a writer's block on one, you can switch to the other, or are they two, you feel like you're using the same parts of your brain to do both?
They actually like feed each other, which is nice. There'll be times where I'm writing a cue for a movie and my brain wants it to go in some other direction that isn't appropriate. And so I'll just stash that away and be like, maybe that's a Moonrock song. I don't know. And so it might become something else. But when you're doing film, the picture is the main thing. You're serving somebody else's vision, somebody else's story, and you've got these they're not concrete guideposts, but you've got stuff going on screen that you have to follow and be appropriate to. And Moonrock is a place where you can just go the other way. And so that's kind of why we started doing it because I had spent so much time writing for other people and being an additional composer. So I'm writing kind of in somebody else's voice for somebody else on top of that. So this was a way to really express wherever we felt that the music wanted to go in whatever direction. And we kind of came up with our own little stories in our heads about it, but it's a place where it's a lot more free.
Hmm.
It's also very daunting, which is why we haven't released that much music. To the blank page is very scary, and I love having the inspiration right in front of me playing out.
Yeah.
So it balances out. When I get too much of one, we go do the other, and vice versa.
That's great. And Redux Redux, it's the first time that you've worked with Kevin and Matthew. So, what is that working relationship like now? And then, did you get brought on early for this one? I've heard from a lot of composers that they prefer to be brought on kind of like from the get-go. Was that your experience here?
Yeah, I've actually worked with Matt and Kevin for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've known them since I was a little kid. So we've worked together for a very long time. And at some point, I'm very lucky to say they just stopped asking me to score their movies, and they just said, "Hey, we're filming near where you live. You want to come by? And I said, sure, I'd love to see what you're doing. And they introduced me to everybody as the composer for the movie. And I was like, oh, I am? Like, great. This is amazing. I mean, that was the first time I've been on set of a movie that I've scored because I'm usually brought on way later. I didn't know anything about what it was about. I just knew the scene that we were shooting. I didn't even know the context of it. I hadn't read a script or anything. I knew basically it was a multiverse something or other. Um, so that was interesting to kind of like be there not knowing anything. It was funny too because it was the scene at the swamp towards the end, and there were these bullfrogs that are just like so incredibly loud the entire time. They had to keep cutting and cutting around it to get around the sounds of the bullfrogs. And I kept on joking like, "This is what the score is going to be. It's going to be, all bullfrogs," not knowing anything about the movie. And in the end, I decided I got a little clip of bullfrogs. I put it into a sampler. I turned it into a kind of a creepy pad, and you'll never know that it's there, but there are bullfrog sounds in the score in the end.
I love whenever composers can find like go to the set or go to something similar and then use it in a way that kind of like sneaks it in. I think that's
Mhm.
so cool. It's also I haven't gotten to see the film yet. I couldn't get a ticket when I was at South by, but I listened to some clips of it and it seems very synth heavy, which also seems very similar to the moon rock band you were talking about. Did you feel like you got to flex more of that muscle and more of that world in terms of this film?
Yeah, definitely. This I've said before, this film is like if I were any kind of a writer, like I'm not of words, but I would have, as you could tell by that sentence that I just tried to spit out. I This is the kind of movie that I would run to go see, basically. It checks every box that I have for a movie that I like. I heard the term recently, lo-fi sci-fi, which I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't aware of before, but it like perfectly explains the kind of movie that I like, which is like this science fiction concept that you don't go too deep into and you just explore what would it be like living in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a space movie where there aren't aliens who are going to blow up the world. It's like low stakes in terms of the world, but maybe really big personal stakes. And this movie is that. And so, just thematically, it's right down my alley, and it just felt like, what I feel inside, and what kind of music I want to write. And then Matt and Kevin, since I've worked with them for so long, they're really open to letting me try things,
Mm-hmm.
and they give really good guidance, and it really feels like a collaboration. So I'm never afraid to go outside of the box with them a little bit and just say like, I tried this, what do you think of it, and sometimes they love it, sometimes they don't, but it's being able to try those things, I think, um is really important, and not feeling like, I got to get really as close to the temp as I can while being safe, while trying to do my own thing. And you
Mm-hmm.
start to really overthink it. So if you can just let your brain go, which is kind of like, what we do with Moonrock is like, just let the music find itself. Um, if you're able to do that with a film, it can get really good results.
Yeah, I since I couldn't see Redux Redux, I watched The Sound of Block Island
Mhm.
yesterday, which is another one that you did, and it fits that same vibe of like lo-fi sci-fi, which I have heard, and it's also very much like up my alley.
Great.
Yeah, so it was really interesting and cool to see a different collaboration that you guys had done together.
Mhm. Yeah, that movie was super fun. It came out in the middle of COVID, and
Yeah.
so it was a virtual film festival. We
Mhm.
had our premiere at a drive-in theater on a rooftop or a parking lot in downtown LA, and so yeah, we didn't get that full experience of it, which we really wanted to. So with Redux Redux, we got to kind of right that wrong, and got to experience it at South by, which is so fun.
I was gonna ask, so did you get to go to Austin?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's my first time at South by, and I see why people go. It was so much fun. There's so many things to see. I didn't see. I'm sure you had the same experience. I didn't see nearly all the things that I wanted to see or talk to the people I wanted to talk to. But yeah, it's a great town. I'd never been to Austin before, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was my first time too, and it's the same story of there's so many movies that you want to see and only so few hours in the day. It's
Yeah.
a bummer, but it's also the best time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Um,
many movies that I mean, there are a lot of people there who are really interested in all these great movies. So so many of the screenings were fully sold out,
mhm.
as really as soon as possible, which is, great for a festival like that.
Yeah.
Um,
And so this is a multiverse story, and I feel like we're in kind of this heyday of multiverse stories. But with yours, did you feel like the score had to change when you would go through these different universes?
one of the really, I think, unique things about this multiverse story is that the universes are all very similar. The whole idea is that Irene is, her daughter's been brutally murdered and she's just going universe to universe trying to find her or find one where she's alive. And like everything's the same. The diner might have had different colored mugs. It's like, or the person who's a cook might be a server now. And it's just like these little teeny tiny differences. So the music didn't have to be totally different. They don't go to a world where there's dinosaurs and a world where everybody's made out of yarn and it's all the same place. So the music was really following Irene's story. And so why is she in this next universe? Why is she gone here? Is this part of the routine of just going one to one to one, or is she escaping something from the previous universe? And so rather than scoring the setting, because it was largely the same, we're really following Irene's story and her story with her daughter, and then other characters she meets along the way.
Yeah. I also want to ask about Black Heat because you co-composed that, and that has come out recently too. And it's another kind of parental story about caring for their kids. Did you find any unexpected, but obviously very different stories, very different films, but
Mhm.
were there any unexpected similarities that you found when you were putting these scores together?
Score wise, there's always that personal story. There's always the love of a parent. There's these moments in both movies where the parents are talking about their kid and when they're not together. And in Black Heat, their daughter's alive. That's the whole story. They're trying to get her out. So there's a lot more hope there than in Redux Redux, where she might have had hope in the beginning of her journey, but it's really starting to wane at this point because she's been to so many universes and her daughter's dead in all of them. So musically, there wasn't a ton similar, but definitely the approach to scoring some of those more emotional moments. And being a parent myself, luckily, I can't relate to having to find a missing child, but I relate to that, that connection you have with your children. So the approach to it was the same, but musically, I think it came out pretty different.
Yeah. Definitely. And then for Black Heat, you also co-produced a song called Hard Life, which I think it's
Mhm.
very interesting that you also had a hand in that. So can you talk a little bit about that experience of creating a song that goes along with the score?
Yeah, it's the first time that I'd done that. I guess I'm practicing for my James Bond movie in the future or something. But we had talked about it briefly when I was scoring the movie, and NLE Choppa is one of the stars of the movie, and he's great, and he makes great music. And the director Wes was said, there's a chance we might do a song, and if we do, we'd like you to write it with him and bring in sounds of the score, so it really sounds like a part of the film. Um, and we were all done with it by the time we actually like worked everything out and decided this is what we were going to do. So I wrote a bunch of ideas, kind of taking in elements of the score and elements of the types of songs that are in the score. There's a lot of like 70s soul music that's in there too. So taking those two elements, and so I'd write like a little 70s thing and then sample it, treat it like I found it in a in the back of a record shop or something, and use that as a sample in what became the hip hop song. And then my friend Scott, who's the other half of Moonrock, he's a really great drummer, really great programmer. Um, so he came in too, and so it's kind of our Moonrock co-production, where he also played drums on the score too, because there's a lot of hip hop trap drums in the score to Black Heat. So yeah, he came in and we worked on a lot together, and we sent the track over to NLE Choppa, and like it was really soon after that he just sent all his vocals, and they're amazing. We were just blown away by it, and so then Tala Barbarous, who's also in the movie, she plays the daughter.
Mhm.
She came over here and then she did background vocals on the song because we wanted to really tie it into that, father-daughter relationship, even though they're not father and daughter in the movie. Um, and then we sent it back to Annalie Chapa. He had Kerry Washington, the singer, not the actress, uh, do a verse at the end and sing her own background vocal. So it was very much like a back and forth on it, but every time it goes back and forth, it got a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So yeah, we're super proud of the song. It's something that's like, very different from what I've done before,
Mhm.
but I loved it, and it's something that I definitely want to do more of.
I mean, you said you're James Bond. Is that like writing a song for James Bond? Would you do that if the
Oh
opportunity?
yeah, no, yeah, no, I wouldn't turn that down. Yeah, I'm a huge James Bond fan, and if I'm thinking of pie in the sky goals,
Yeah.
that would be the one. That's really fun scores. The songs are always great.
Yeah.
I've got just a playlist of every Bond song, and I'll listen to that when I'm in the mood. Um, it would be great. I'm not expecting it anytime soon, but hey, you put it into the world, and who
Exactly.
knows what'll come out of it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to see all of Redux Redux because I really did love Sound of Block Island. I thought that was
Thank
so
you.
great. So,
Thank you so
yeah.
much, Tina.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.